but I'm actually here because of this, not in spite of this. The fact that we have a unique identity allows us to be, to stand out. No one will forget you in a meeting. No one will forget you afterwards. But equally, if you're firm in your identity and you really actually engage with that identity and really become one with it, that authenticity will also show up elsewhere in your career. You'll just do a better job at whatever you do because you're more in tune with yourself. And so you shouldn't look at the identity as a liability, a risk, something that you have to manage. It's an asset. It's the opposite. It's actually something that will allow you to do more, to unleash the power inside you, because it is so unique and so powerful. You're part of something so much bigger, and this allows you to see that and really harness that power. So as you think about your career, university, your next step, I encourage you first to really get comfortable with your own sense of identity as a Sikh, because that foundation will allow you to do really whatever you want to do. If you want to study medicine or business or law or entrepreneurship, anything, you'll have your best chance of succeeding in that if you're comfortable foremost with your own sense of self and your identity. So I encourage you to spend this week thinking about that and the weeks after this reflecting on that as well, to really honor that sense of identity, embrace it, and use it to your advantage. Use it as an asset for yourself. So I didn't want to talk too much because I wanted to leave time for Q&A so that we can engage a bit more, because it's a very hot room and there's going to be a lot of talking. So I'm going to stop there and I'll encourage Baji to do some Q&A.
Thank you, Parminder Singh ji. Do you all have any questions for Parminder Singh? Yes. Stand up. So I think the question for everybody else is, how did you choose your career path? And why didn't you go to medical school or law school? And what was your primary motivation for doing that, or not doing it?
So I wasn't smart enough to go to med school or law school, clearly. My brother is a doctor, my wife is a doctor, so we sort of tick those boxes in the family. But seriously, what I was drawn to in business was firstly just the energy of the environment. I had done some, I was originally a science major at university, thinking that I would use that to go into maybe some different areas after school. And I did some research projects, and it didn't quite give me that sensation that I was looking for. I did an internship on Wall Street while I was at university, and that did. It was just fun. I just enjoyed that. I just knew intuitively that this is something that was exciting for me. It challenged me, and it had that energy intensity level that I was looking for in a career. So for me, it was more of a sensation, I would say, initially. And then I kind of started on that track. And as I went through the track, it became much more about finding the right people to work with the right long-term vision. Can I work with this person for 10 years and enjoy it and get a lot of work done and get a lot of, production, create something? Those were the big questions that I was asking myself when I was looking at a new opportunity. I also leapt at opportunity. So when the firm asked me to go to London 10 years ago, I had never lived in London, I'd never worked in London, but I thought, this is going to be pretty cool if I can go there and I can do deals around the world. We'll sort of see what happens. And it was amazing. I loved it. I didn't know what it was going to be like at the beginning, but I tried it, and it worked out. So if you're interested in business, I'd encourage you to go try it out, see how you feel. I wouldn't try to force anything. It'll come naturally, but try different things, and then when it feels right, lean into it.
All right, thank you, Parminder Singh. And you probably should talk to him afterwards for maybe the internship opportunity, if not putting anybody on the spot, but that'd be a great idea. Our next speaker is Gurpreet Singh Bhatia, and he's at a very senior level at the Department of Defense. Gurpreet Singh ji? Yeah, oh my goodness.
Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Thank you for having me here today. So my name is Gurpreet Singh Bhatia. I also have a similar story to what's being told, and I resonate with a lot of the points that are being said today. So I grew up in Maryland, so I came to the United States when I was 13 years old, so not born and bred here. Went to a local public school, Gaithersburg High School, you might have heard of it, and did engineering, as you would expect for first-generation immigrants. So we are two brothers. I did engineering, and my brother became a doctor, which is very traditional. So I went to engineering. I did my engineering at University of Alabama in Huntsville, and then I did a master's from Johns Hopkins. And then later, I did an MBA at Georgetown, which is an interesting story. Well, I'll get to it in a second. But along the way, I have basically been in public service. So I have been in the Department of Defense for about 25, 26 years now. And I've tried public service, and I've been in private sector as well for a couple of years, where I've done a variety of roles. So my first job actually out of college was really looking at engineering, hardcore engineering. So how do you build power systems? So that's what I did engineering on. So how do you keep the lights on? And as part of that, it was interesting to learn how does electricity work? So that's kind of what I did around for a couple of years. And then I got into computer science side of it, and haven't looked back since. A lot of the things that happened early in my career were more accidental than planned. So I was an engineer, got into computer science, networking, and then later took a lot of twists and turns along my career. So in my career, I have done, in my 25 years, I have been an engineer. I have been a fellow working on Capitol Hill with senators. I have served in the United Kingdom for 3 years for Department of Defense. I have done 2 tours of the Pentagon, where in a couple of different roles. So a lot of different things. What I always tell people, and kids like yourself, is, to Vijay's point earlier, this is really two things that you really should focus on. One is be confident about yourself and who you are. It took me a long time to find my way. It took me a long time to get confident. So I was a very shy kid, didn't participate in any activities, didn't speak up, didn't take any assignments that people were uncomfortable in, just because of the way I looked. And a lot of people will reinforce that idea with you. So don't let them push you around. This is your story and your journey. You get to write the entire story, and you own the entire story. So make sure you are writing it, not somebody else is writing it for you. I think I want to share a couple of stories with you guys. So as part of my job, my very first assignment at the Department of Defense, I wanted to do we have assignments all over the world, so I wanted to go to the Pentagon. I thought it was really cool, right, to be in the Pentagon. There's no other Sardars that I see around. I wanted to be there. So I asked one of my mentors, how do I get there? So he starts to tell me about the job. He said, hey, I should do these kind of things. But at the end, he, just like the other mentors, said, you're not going to fit in. That was really a turning point in my career, where I said, I will not be in a place where you're going to tell me that I'm not going to fit in. So I decided that that's the job I want. It took me 3 years to get that job, but I ended up getting that job, and I got a lot of great positions after that. So the thing I learned there was be persistent. Don't let other people tell you what you can or cannot do. Be really good at what you do, right? So I, as an engineer, learned a lot of skills along the way from engineering and found a lot of other things I liked along the way too, right? I liked management. I liked to deal with money. So find what you think you're good at. So for me, it was finding the intersections of engineering, business, product management, leadership, and at the end of the day, for me, the thing that keeps me going is I want to be at the table where there's no other Sikh. That's my goal, to be at the table, at the decision-making table where there's nobody else that looks like me. So you have to find your motivation on what excites you and what do you want to do. So today, I sit in a job where I'm the Deputy Chief Information Security Officer for the Department of Defense, which means I'm the #2 guy for cybersecurity for the entire Department of Defense. So it's not unsaid that you can't get there. It takes a lot of work. There's a lot of people that are going to tell you what you can and cannot do, but follow through on what you think you can do. Education is really an important part of it. Make sure you follow through on your education. And there's no right or wrong answer. I think education gives you a discipline. It gives you a way to think. It also gives you something that allows you to test your skills, what you think you're good at and what you're not good at. What I always tell my mentees is at work is that know what you really don't want to do and what you're not good at. But follow the left side where you know what you're good at. Follow that, right? So study that, learn that, find people that will teach you those skills, grow. There's a lot of education out there that you can learn from. Along the way, make sure that you are thinking through your career. So cybersecurity is a broad field. People can do all kinds of things in cybersecurity. So if anybody wants to talk about a career in cybersecurity, always happy to talk about that too. But understand what you want to do and aim high. I stay in public service because for me it's about a mission. It's about serving something greater than me, which to me appeals to me because that is the core principle of Sikhi. So that is what I get excited about. It isn't about money. It isn't about helping businesses. It's really about service to the nation or service to something bigger, and being in a national security arena where you're helping defend freedom, for instance, right? So if you think about freedom, for instance, we protect all the weapon systems. We protect our national boundaries. We defend our nation overseas. So that's the space that excites me. So you have to find what excites you, right? So whatever it is, make sure you understand your motivation. I'll stop there and take any questions.
All right, guys. Does anybody have any questions for our speaker? Yes? Sorry. Have you heard of the honorary medal of... Have you earned any honorary medals of service?
I have, actually. I've earned 2, and I'm going to get a 3rd one for my service. So there's meritorious civilian awards. So I've received 2 of them, and I'm about to get a 3rd one.
Wow, very good. Bole Sonia, Sat Sri Akal. Any other questions? Very good question. Hanji, Jajar Singh. Uchi bolo. Wait. So is there a combination between cybersecurity and what? And criminology.
Yes, it's called forensics. So cybersecurity is the art of defending your infrastructure, your data, and keeping everything safe. And forensics is the art of actually looking through what went wrong, dissecting how things happened, and use that as evidence for trials and criminal cases. So there's a lot of things you can do with cybersecurity. I always encourage, no matter who you are, to learn about cybersecurity and have some technical skills no matter what you do. We live in we live in a world where everything is digital, so understanding the domain you live in is really, really important, and how to be safe and secure and teach others as well.
Okay, thank you, Jeev. Bole Sonehal, Sat Sri Akal. All right, our next speaker is also Dr. Manmohan Singh from the International Monetary Fund, is that correct? And he'll be speaking to you about his journey as well. So without further ado, Dr. Manmohan Singh.
Thank you very much. It's a real pleasure to be meeting you, talking with you. I think you've heard two wonderful, wonderful stories. Mine is similar, it's complementary, but it's also a bit different. So I was actually born in India, but I grew up in London. So my parents migrated when I was 11 years old in the late 60s. So I'm a bit older than you guys. And now at that time, so we lived in West London, a place called Southall. Almost 95% of the population was white English. And there were very few Sikhs. You know, the Indians and the Sikhs sort of influx essentially began to happen in the mid-70s, late 70s. So I went to high school there in London, and it was challenging. It was challenging. You know, your own teachers, you know, of course, they appreciated the hard work, they appreciated, you know, your dedication, but, you know, they would make a snide remark here and there about, you know, about my appearance. But, you know, you persist and you make, you know, you do the very best and you excel. You know, the word excellent was mentioned. You know, you excel and then, you know, as they say, work conquers all. And they appreciate that despite, in a sense, this sort of tense or tension in the atmosphere, you know, you are really pressing ahead. So I then went from there to London School of Economics. I'm an economist. Finance is my area. I did my BSc Masters there. And then after my MSc, I joined British Petroleum. Now you might wonder, okay, what's an economist doing you know, in British Petroleum? But they had a corporate strategy department. This is in the late 70s. And I was the first Sikh, actually the first Indian in that department. And the boss there, I think, looked at me like the two stories we've heard before. You know, are you going to be able to really get on? Yes, I value, you know, what you are doing, etc. To cut a long story short, I got on, but then I didn't stay there very long, not because I wasn't getting on, but I got admission to Cambridge University. I did my PhD in economics, and I taught there for 5 years. I was their assistant professor. And then from there, I came to, you know, I married at that time, by that time, and I came to the United States. I got a job offer at the International Monetary Fund. How many of you have heard of World Bank, IMF? So I was there for 25 years. I won't go through the chapter and verse of it, but I want to share with you, you know, a couple of incidents. So fairly soon after I started, you know, I had to go to a board meeting. You know, I was in a position where I had to attend a board meeting, and IMF at that time, and actually I think even since, there has not been a Sardarji with a turban-wearing Sardarji. And the security to go to the board is actually very tight. And as many of you here, or several of you here, you know, I took Amrit before I left India. My mother was very keen, you know, Amrit Chakana. And of course, you know, Amrit there you have Panch Kakar and you have a Kripan. And I had the Kripan, and you know, it was not easy, but I was able to go to the board meeting, and after the first incident, there was never any issue, to the extent that some of the security guards there, it's over 35 years ago, they're almost nearing retirement. I visit IMF now occasionally, and they say, oh, we remember you. We remember you. You know, I remember that first day. So it was, you know, it was like quite an extraordinary moment. And then during the course of my time at the IMF, you know, very blessed I became head of the fiscal division, which deals with government spending revenues throughout the world, 190 countries. And I led missions, they call them missions, which is really teams of IMF staff, senior staff, to meet with the finance ministers, prime ministers, and so on. And several of them were to countries like, say, the Netherlands. So you go there, and the Dutch finance minister knows you are coming. He looks at the name, but when he sees you, sort of eyes, you sense. I mean, he's a professional guy, very senior person. You sense that there's a slight unease. But believe me, within half an hour of talking with you, he's literally eating out of your hand. What matters is not how you look, but what you do. What matters is the confidence you have and the help you can give him, the advice you can give him. Similarly, the meetings with, say, the Polish prime minister, Polish finance minister. You go and talk with them, and they initially look at you, the reaction is very different when you meet, when you sort of finish the meeting after an hour. During the course of my time at the IMF, I was actually able to take 3 years leave, and I worked in a bank. Parminder's bank, as they sort of merged now, or the bank he used to work for has taken over Credit Suisse. And I was in charge of emerging market strategy. And then the first day on the trading floor, I was told the sentiment similar, that look, if you want to succeed in an investment bank like this, very, very conservative bank in many ways, you can't do it with a pug. Right? We'll see about that. I managed to do well, in fact, very well. But then I came back to the IMF, continued. So I was actually responsible for also the work for the G7. I'm sure you've heard of a group of 7 countries, G20. Then I also became head of the financing division, which manages the entire finances of the IMF. These are large amounts, trillions of dollars. The fact that I'm a Sikh, profess to be a Sikh, have Sikh values, look like a Sikh, never came in the way after those initial challenges, after the initial issues. At the same time, I sort of kept a foot in the academia camp. I took another sabbatical, and I was teaching at the Kennedy School at Harvard, and I was a visiting professor at Georgetown. At the Kennedy School, professional academics, very liberal. I gave seminars, I gave classes to students, but I also gave seminars to the faculty. And I will never forget the first time I gave a seminar to the faculty. Very, very liberal, global-oriented professors. Okay, this guy, Sardarji, is going to talk to us about, this was an issue of, public policy, fiscal policy. But within 2 minutes, you open your mouth and you start showing the presentation slides and so on, those reservations, you can see from their faces. All they are interested in what you're going to say, the caliber, your caliber, the quality of what you are saying, and not how you are looking. I think I'm probably running out of time. I then, took early retirement from the IMF about 11 years ago, and I joined an investment fund. Now, some of you will find this quite funny. It's a Canadian fund. It's a Quebecois fund based in Montreal. And when I was interviewed, I was still at the IMF, thinking I've been here now, almost 25 years, time for a change, but before I fully retire. The CEO interviewed me, and he said, well, look, this is a Quebecois fund. What you have to offer us is great. It fits in with perfectly what we are looking for. But it's sort of, you could see, you could feel what's going on in his mind. And also there was this little question of the French language. All the operations in that company, and I'm still, by the way, with that company, are done in French. And I allayed his, let's say, reservations, and I also told him that, look, within a quarter or two, within 3 to 6 months, I knew some French, I'll be fluent in French. Now, this is the funny part. So I actually had a very senior position. I did take lessons in French. I still can't speak French fluently, but I thrived, despite the fact of how I look, and I couldn't speak the language in which most of the work is done, because over time my job was dealing with global issues by CDPQ globally, and you know, again, it's a question of your caliber, the confidence you have, the faith you have in yourself and in your religion, in your community, in your family. And to cut a long story short, I'm still there, although I've retired. They wouldn't let me go, and I'm doing part-time work.
Wonderful, thank you. Bole so nihal. That's your call. Do we have some questions for Faisal? Yes? Utti bolo. Yes? Yes? Your question? Yeah? Talk loud. Can you hear me? Can you? Yeah, can you ask your question? Hold on. Let you get the mic. That way we can, everybody can hear. Thanks, Minda. Okay, so ask your question to Harjap, and then he'll just tell it to me. Yeah. Dun, 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 dun. How did you deal with job discrimination? in job interviews?
Excellent question. So when I was interviewed for the IMF job, you know, again, a lot of the time, the discrimination or the bias, especially at that level in these interviews and so on, it's not evident. Sometimes it is, as I mentioned, sometimes it isn't. But frankly, you put that behind you. You know, in the job interview, you are a professional. Yes, you are a Sikh, you know, you have your own faith, but you are a professional and you're talking about very specific, you know, professional issues, and you put that behind you. And then, you know, trust me, over this very long career I've had, it always works. Because the confidence itself, you know, any discrimination or any, you know, it'll be challenging. There will be times, right? But, you know, what I say is that if you have confidence in yourself, people sense it. And in fact, the fact that you're looking different and they have this sort of question, is the person really good enough because of what he is? And they feel that, not only is he good enough, he's actually even better. There's a sort of like a force multiplier. You know, not only you are unique, you have your identity, you have your confidence, you have your faith, and you are even better.
So my question is, I did Model UN all throughout high school, and one of our committees was IMF, so I just thought it was so much fun. But do you need a PhD for your line of work that you're currently in?
Sorry, so you're asking, do you need a PhD to join the IMF?
Yeah, and would you ever like represent a country, or were you always kind of like, you know, the head or whatever?
Okay, so excellent questions. First of all, IMF is the best place to work for an economist in the world. You know, you work on individual countries, you work on the global economy, you work, you work on financial issues, you work on, fiscal policy, as in my case. And, I was very lucky. I was in the research department of the IMF for 8-10 years, given my background, and I published a lot of papers, a lot of books at the IMF, right? It used to be that PhD was essential, right? And PhD still is, I would say, 70 to 80% of the people who are hired. Maybe it's a bit less now, 65 to 70% have a PhD, right? But you have 35% who don't. And increasingly, if you have a finance background, you have a good master's degree, that's valuable. They're focusing on, financial market issues for the last 20, 30 years. That's always been a mandate of the IMF. So, you know, it's a question of if you have certainly you need a master's degree, right? You have a master's degree and you have experience and expertise elsewhere, you would have a very, very good shot at getting a job at the IMF. It's real fun. You know, you discover the world and you discover individual countries. You discover the world in other places. You know, Parminder is working at Carlisle, discovered the world. It's a different perspective. It's a huge amount of fun.
Really appreciate it. Bole so nihal. Sat Sri Akal. Again, another suggestion, do network with the speakers if they're around after the event and ask them more questions. I'm going to give you a little story before I introduce the next speaker. My friends were here from Virginia yesterday before the Kirtan, and I'm talking to them, I'm joking around, and there's this young, tall Sardar guy talking to them. And I keep on looking at his turban, and I just keep on looking. And, you know, I even tell him, I go, your turban's really nice. And then, you know, we trade our phone numbers, and he's traded on Instagram. I'm going in and out. And he says that his Instagram handle is Turban Magic. And I was like, yeah, it is Turban Magic, and, you know. And so I was just fascinated by his conversation, and we were talking. He told me he was part of the National Guard, and then all of a sudden I had this rush of memories that I saw this guy on Instagram doing bhangra with on the beach. Was it on the beach somewhere? And everything. So I was taken aback by his, you know, steps, a little jealous, but his bug was amazing. And then the best part is, you know, we walk away, and then I come back into the Diwan Hall and Kirtan's starting, and he's sitting there playing tabla with the Singhs playing the string instruments, and he blew me away. I was like, oh my God. And so this guy's multi-talented in my mind. His name is Saminder Singh, and he's going to talk about his journey for us. And so I'm going to have a lot of questions as well. So without further ado, Saminder Singh. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa,
Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. It's an honor to be here. This is my first panel ever. I'm a little baby compared to everybody here. Thank you, Uncle Ji, for having me here. Not to make you feel bad, or, you know, Uncle Ji, or Paji, you're looking great. Whatever you're doing great. But he said he was here over 20 years ago, just over 20 years ago. I'm just over 20 years old. So that's what I'm saying. Like, it's crazy to be here, like among like people with such caliber, right? Like I'm nothing compared to everyone here. So thank you all. Thank you for having me here. My name is Saminder Singh Tinsa. I'm from Virginia. Who here is from Virginia? Hey, who here is from Maryland? Yo, Virginia's better, isn't it? Virginia's better. Who's ever heard of a person named Turban Magic? Or seen a guy on TikTok in a uniform? I know some of y'all are coming up to me and whatever. Anyways, so that's me. I'm here to represent the Army National Guard as a career, and you know, my journey so far in the Army. So I was born and raised in Virginia, Fairfax, Virginia. Raised in Leesburg, so I've been a country boy my entire life. So I had some. So a little bit about my career, right, or my upbringing. So I went to high school out in Loudoun County, Virginia. Who's heard of Loudoun County? It's the best county. Loudoun County, Virginia. Went to Loudoun County High School, and then I went to college at George Mason University. Have a bachelor in IT cybersecurity, but I haven't really used it. So I'm gonna be talking to you afterwards, buddy. And then you know, then I went on to work. You know, I kind of had like a year and a half of a gap because I didn't have certifications. So I kind of had like a gap of me trying to find a job. I was helping my mom out. She owns a 7-Eleven, so helping her out at her 7-Elevens. And you know, I came across a job at Amazon. I was just a data technician. It's like a very low-level job where you're not really doing much. You're like the bottom of the barrel at Amazon. So I had that. And right before I joined that job, though, you guys ever heard of I don't know, y'all are too young maybe. Y'all ever heard of a show called Man vs. Wild? Yeah? Who's heard of it? It's a pretty pretty crazy show, right? Like this guy, basically the show is this guy, he goes out to all these extreme environments in the world, and he survives there for like a couple days, shows you how to survive there. So my brother, you know Preetinder Singh, the one who's teaching Taos, that's my older brother. He's 8 years older than me. So I used to just watch whatever he used to put on the TV, right? So I grew up watching Man vs. Wild and like all these other shows. And then that kind of just sat with me my entire life, right? I never joined Boy Scouts or anything like that, just never thought of it. But one day, it was like a couple weeks before I applied for this job at Amazon. I just woke up one morning, I was like, yo, I want to learn how to survive out in, you know, jungle or wherever, right? So I went on Reddit. You all heard of Reddit. You guys know, you're all old enough to. All right, so I went on Reddit. I was like, how do I learn survival skills, right? And then Reddit gave me like 2 or 3 options. It was like these 2 classes out in Virginia, and then the third option was the Army. And I was like, all right, I'd pay a couple $100, whatever, to join these classes, and then how much information am I gonna retain, right, after that? I'd really have to go out there and practice it. But the Army, that's like kind of long term, right? I haven't learned any survival skills yet being in the Army, not yet, I will soon. But so that was kind of my reasoning for joining the Army, right? The time I joined, there was probably, I want to say definitely less than 45 Singhs in the Army, right? The regulation was just passed in 2017. I don't know if y'all have heard of Major Kelsey. He comes and goes here to this camp. So he kind of worked with Singhs and tried to get them to keep their pag and their dari, right? In 2017, then it was first allowed where Singhs could wear their pag, they could wear the dari, or they could keep their dari in the Army, right? There's a lot of, you know, everyone in the Army was like, the gas masks, because we have to wear gas masks. You've seen gas masks, like they look pretty intense. So they would say like, it doesn't seal on your dari. That's not true. I went through the gas chamber, I went through all that, like it seals, it definitely seals. So that was one main concern, right? But all that was proved, you know, wrong and everything. And then I reached out to, so I was a Pangada captain at George Mason, and one of the girls that I was a captain of, her brother, his name is Arjun Gotra. He was the first Singh out of West Point to keep his pag and dari. So I told Jasreen, I was like, yo, let me, you know, I kind of am thinking about joining the Army. Let me talk to your brother. So she gave me her brother's contact, and then I talked to him. He was going through he was just about to go to Ranger School, which is like the elite force in the Army. And he was gonna be the second Singh to do that. There's actually one Singh who's gone through Ranger School with with a pag and a dari. He's actually from Maryland. I don't know if he's from Maryland originally, but he lives here. His name is Major Simritpal Singh. He's very low-key. Maybe I shouldn't have told you all that. So, you know, I have all these I'm so blessed to have all these connections, so I just reached out to him for help. And that's kind of where, you know, that was my path into the Army. Now, when I went to my experience in the Army so far, it's just been training, right? That's what the Army really is. It's just always training, right? So that when stuff hits the fan, I'm not going to use profanity, but when stuff hits the fan, when stuff pops off, like you're kind of ready. It's like second nature, right? That's what the Army's about. We're always training, always training. So when I went to basic training or boot camp, that was the first time, that was a lot of people, why they join the Army is because it's a way for them to get out of their environment. We are very privileged to be in the DMV where we don't really see too much poverty, right? But when you go to basic training, you go to boot camp, you see, I don't mean to use it as a derogatory term, but it's like hillbillies, people who are uneducated, and it's not their fault, it's just their counties, right, where they live in. And then they've never seen any other person other than a black person and a white person, right? Someone of their own race. They've never seen Hispanics, like any type of brown people, right? So when they saw me for the first time, it's like, like how Paji in his film was like, you get all these weird looks, right? But Uncle G here was talking about how you present yourself, right? How you carry yourself, your confidence. That's what takes you, that's like 70%. That's like 70% of what takes you where you are, right? What will take you to the place that you're meant to go to, right? It's that confidence, the way you carry yourself. I'm still learning. We're all still learning, right? We're all always learning that. That's the whole point of being a Sikh, right? We're a disciple of life, always learning, right? Trying to be on top of our game. right? Because everywhere we go, we always have to represent, because we have our entire community on our back, right? So like now, every place I go to in the Army, every place, you said? Okay, every place I go into the Army, right, I'm the only Sardar there. I've only come across 3 Sardars in the Army. And when it's like all 3 of us, it's just a blast, right? It's like, yo, we can relate to one another and whatever. But like Buddy over here was saying, I'd rather be somewhere where there's not many Singhs, or many Sikhs, right? Because you get to represent on a different level, right? Every place I've been to, I just got a Army Achievement Medal recently as the distinguished leader out of 110 people. Like, so you get to achieve you get to take like our entire Panth on a different level, right? You get to teach them about what it means to be a Sikh. Like, these guys have never seen a guy with long hair, right? So you explain to them, right? We keep it out of respect for Mother Nature, right? Every time we cut it, if it grows back, Mother Nature has a purpose to it, right? It's like cutting our hair is like a lion shaving its mane. Have you guys seen a lion without its mane? Never, right? It looks funny, right? Just imagine a lion without its mane. Same thing with us, right? So, yeah, that's been my kind of Army career, right? Where I work full-time, because this Army National Guard is part-time, right? You go 1 weekend a month, and then 2 weeks, 3 weeks, or 4 weeks out of the year for training out in the jungle, where you're kind of living out in the forest, and it's pretty rough. So I just came back from that. Next year will be 1 week more, and then the week after that will be 1 more week, and then after that, I'm most likely going to get deployed somewhere in a combat zone. So, what was I talking about right before this? My other career, thank you. So my other career, my full-time job, I work at the National Defense University, Fort McNair. I'm sure you've heard of it. It's in DC. I work as an executive assistant to 1-star and 2-star generals. And, you know, again, there's always like, I'm the only thing in all of Fort McNair, right? This entire Army base, right? And you get to represent on a different level, and it's such an honor, right? So, yeah, my whole thing is putting the Sikh community on my back. Wherever you go, always represent it to the best level possible, right? Because our ancestors, like, that's all they did. You hear some crazy stories, right? We could never mount up to that level, right? But we try to. So try to live up to that level, to that expectation, right? Of what a Sikh is, what a Singh is, what a God is, right? Always try to do everything to the best way possible. Yeah, that's my advice and career advice. Thank you so much. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.
Don't sit down yet. Do we have questions for Turban Magic or Magic? Yes? Hold on, wait for the mic.
So whenever you're in the military, you have like support counselors or whatever, and hello?
Yeah.
And they help you with like mental, because it's an excruciating experience. So was there like a sick person to like do ardas and like nitnem and all of that for you on campus when you were in boot camp?
Yeah, so every military institution, whether it's any branch, any armed forces, right? Marines, Army, Navy, Air Force. We have someone called a chaplain. I don't know if you've heard of a chaplain, but they're someone who studies all faiths, and basically they're your kind of like they like help you, guide you in your spiritual path. Like they push you to do what you need to do to get better, to feel better. So yeah, that's what a chaplain is called. I mean, that's what you call a chaplain. Yeah.
All right, thank you so much, Sminder Singh. And do talk to him afterwards. We're going to move on to our next. We have 3 more speakers, and I'm happy to say our next speaker is a reporter from New Jersey. Her name is Jyoti Kaur, and I have the pleasure of watching her on the news all the time, and I'm like, hey, I know a reporter. She's a very talented reporter at a very young age, and we really are eager to find out how she started this journey in reporting. So, Jyoti, okay, good.
Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Okay, you guys are looking a little bit tired, so I want everybody to stand up really quickly. Step up, 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 up. I'm not gonna make you do jumping jacks, I promise. Maybe push-ups, maybe squats. No, I'm kidding. Okay, stand up quickly, quickly, quickly. I want everybody to look to the person to your left, and without talking, I want you to say hi. Don't open your mouth. Like, so you look to, yeah, look like, yep, groups of two. You look here, you look here. No, look at the person next to you, yeah? And as soon as you've done it, without moving your hands, without moving your mouth, without using your words, once you've said hi to that person, turn the other way to the person to the other side of you and say hello. Without using your hands, without using your mouth. Okay, and I promise I'm gonna come back to why I'm doing this. I'm not crazy, I swear. Sit down, use it. Like Virji mentioned, my name is Jyoti, but my full name is Ratanjot, and it's so cool being in a room full of people who can actually pronounce my name. How many of you have a name where, like, when it's the first day of school, or maybe you have a substitute and you just hear that hesitation and you're like, oh man, it's my turn, yeah? Okay, so that was me for a long time, and instead of like stepping into that power, right, all of our names have power, our names have beauty, I decided not to use my name anymore. So instead of using Ratanjot, which I got Ratanjot, Ratanjot, Ratatouille, Ratatat-tat, I decided, it's fine. I'll just use an easier name. And so I went by Ratanjot, Tanjot, Tanj, and my parents would cringe, like, every time my friends would come over or someone would call and like ask for Tanj or Tanjan. Inside I cringed too, but I was like, whatever. I didn't grow up with people that looked like me, so this was the best that I can do. And it that name followed me into my career as a reporter, as Virji mentioned. It followed me, throughout my education, throughout my job as a news reporter. And it didn't sit well with me, but I didn't know what to do about it, right? Like, I was like, this is how I branded myself. This is how people know me. This is who I am now. And I guess I'm just gonna have to go with it. So I worked as a reporter. My first job was in upstate New York in a small place called Elmira, New York, which I'm sure none of you have heard of. I didn't know about it until I had to apply for jobs in like small places and get my experience as a journalist. And like Virji was mentioning, yes, I dealt with people who were like, where'd they get you with your tan skin and your dark hair? And I was like, I don't know, India, I guess, but I'm American, I swear. And so it was really like, it was kind of uncomfortable for me, but I decided like, I'm gonna go with this. Like, this is who I am. This is the person that I've created. But inside, it was killing me. And at my first job, my boss was like, okay, so you go by Tanja, like, how about like, why don't we make it Tanya? And I was like, Tanya? Like, I did this to make it easier for you, and it's still not easy enough. But I was like, no, we're not gonna go by Tanya, like Tanja is fine. But then when they would I have an earpiece in my ear, like when I'm reporting out in the field, and I can hear like what the anchors, the people who are sitting at the desk, I can hear what they're saying in my earpiece. And like, I would hear them like just butchering my name. Like, I'm like, I did this to make it easier for you, but it's still not easy. Like, you're still calling me Tanya, Tanja, Tanyo, like Hanya. I'm like, what, where is this? Like, where are these letters coming from? And so it was so awkward and uncomfortable. And I just kept going with it. Then I went to my next job in Albany, which maybe you know about that, Albany, New York. It's a little bit of a bigger city. And I kept on going. Yeah, there you go, Albany. And so there, I knew like there was a bigger Sikh population, and like obviously we have someone here from Albany, and there's like Gurdwara there and stuff. So I was like, man, this is just not cool. Like, I would do stories that were like in like the Indian community, and they were like, okay, like you sound kind of like us, like you're speaking like us, like these Indian people, but like, what is your name? Like, how is this your name? And my dad, I come from like an Amritari family, a pretty well-known family in the New Jersey area. And my dad, like every time I would like post my stories on like Facebook or Instagram, I don't even think there was Instagram then. I'm old, I know, you guys call me auntie, it's fine. Whenever I would post my stories and like his friends would see it, like he would just be like, hi, like, Meri ardas hai, like just, Tanja kitho aa gaya? Like, just please, like, use your name. And I didn't look like a Kaur. Like, I didn't have that like outward representation, and I just did it because I thought like, this is what I have to do to kind of fit in, right? Like, this is the person that I have to be to kind of fit in. And like you guys, like coming to camp here when I was younger was one of the only places where I felt like I could be myself. Because there were people who looked like me, there were people who could say my name, there were people who understood where I was coming from. So really like own this space that you guys have here, because it's so beautiful to have people that like understand what your life might be like. So it didn't sit well with me, but I just kind of kept on going with it. I got my next job in North Carolina, and I was kind of like going through a point in my life where I just felt like I can't do this anymore. Like I looked in the mirror and I was like, who is this person? Like I didn't look anything like how I thought a core should look like. I didn't sound anything like a core. Like I felt like I was living a split life. So it was like when I would come home, it's Jyoti. But then when I was out in public, it was Tanja. So I had this like, I feel like I had like double personality going on. Like it was so like, any of you guys feel like that? Like you feel like when I go out at school, it's like I'm this person, but when I'm home, I'm this person. It's like, yeah? Anyway, you can raise your hands, it's fine. You feel like you're living in like split life, right? Yeah. So like with Gurbani, like I kind of like, it teaches like how we kind of like live in duality. And like for once I was like, wow, like my dad's always told me like Guru Granth Sahib is our teacher. This is like our guide for life. But I was like, wait, this isn't Barney. Like I'm actually living in duality. Like this is like Guruji teaches us. Like why are we doing this? Like how can we get out of it? And so I kind of had like this little like aha moment. I was starting to have these aha moments. And while I was in North Carolina, I wasn't really keeping the right people around me. Like Gurbani also teaches us so much about Sangat, right? Like the people who we hang out with, we're gonna build characteristics like those people, similarities, we're gonna do those things that they kind of want us to do. And realistically, I wasn't keeping the right Sangat around me, and I was kind of getting into like things that I'm not proud of, but that's my journey. And my sister was living in North Carolina at the time too. And she was like, okay, let's go home to New York. There's this Simran Smagam going on. And I was like, oh, yaar, I don't want to sit there and do Waheguru, like, come on, like, really? Like, I was so, like, I'm embarrassed about it now, but like I said, I grew up in an Amritari household, and I didn't connect with it at all. And so I listened to my sister, because like, okay, it's fine, I'll go home, I'll go to New Jersey, like, I'll go to this Smagam with you. And in that moment, when I closed my eyes and I sat with Sangat and I said the words, why, Guru, why, Guru, it was like everything that I had kept bottled up, all these things that I was dealing with in my mind were like, it just like, it was like this purging of emotions where I was just crying, but I was so happy at the same time. And it was just like, what? By just saying Waheguru and like listening to the sound of my voice, like this is what can happen. Like I was so focused on like everybody's stories, right? Like as a journalist, I tell the stories that are going on the news every day, right? That's what my job description is. But I never focused about what my story was, like what was going on in my head. And Simran kind of allowed me to do that, where it was like I had to sit with myself and the chaos that was going up in my mind. Like I mentioned, like the split personality, the duality, that was a big part of it. And so the group that had come to New York for the Simran program, they're based in the UK, and they were like, yeah, we do this, Simran, we teach about Barney, we teach about how like Gurbani is practical, you can actually like apply it to your life and live according to the teachings. Come to the UK and come learn about it. And so I was like, okay, sure, why not? Like I hate my job anyway, but maybe I can get the time off, I'm sure. Maybe I could do some sort of film about it or something, I don't know. So I planned to go there for just 2 weeks. And when I sat with that Sangat, right, we talked a little bit about Sangat and the people that you spend time with, like their characteristics, they're gonna rub off on you. When I sat with that Sangat, who their only intentions were to jap, read Barney, do Kirtan, help you to your purpose of your life, right? When I started sitting with that Sangat, it was like all of this dukh that I was like feeling inside, it just melted away. Like slowly, slowly, it just started melting away. And instead of just staying there for 2 weeks, I decided to quit my job, and I ended up staying there for about 5 years, I think. Yeah, I didn't plan it, but I left my job, and I ended up going back to school. I got my master's in London, and that group did like this Sikh art exhibition where I kind of led the social media, I led the media, I interviewed people there as a journalist, right? Like I film, I edit, I do all that stuff. So I was like, what a beautiful way, like this nonprofit, this group that like led me to this path of Simran, now they're trying to spread the teachings of Sri Guru Granth Sahib Ji to the world. Like, what an honor for me to serve as like the content production manager. What an honor for me to kind of produce content, create videos, interview people, and tell people what Guru Granth Sahib's teachings really are. So I did that for a while, and then when COVID happened, I was like, okay, I guess we all have to go back to our home countries. I didn't have a house anymore. Like I boxed all my stuff up, and I sent it to my parents' house who are in New Jersey. And so when the pandemic happened and we were told to go back to our home countries, I moved back home with my parents. And that was during the Morcha, during the Kisan Morcha, the farmers' protest. This news outlet called Baz, I don't know if you guys know about it. Have you guys heard of Baz? Yeah. Okay. So Baz was starting up, and they were doing a lot of like important work where they were talking about the farmers' protest, giving voice to the story that was going on that wasn't really happening in the mainstream media. And I was like, okay, this is it. This is my chance. So I reached out to them, and I was like, hey, I'm a journalist. I've worked in the mainstream, but like it's not really like meaningful to me. So do you have opportunities? And they did. And so for the first time, I was like, how can I write about like my people with a name like Tanja? So that was the beginning of like me now using Jyoti as a published journalist. And then fast forward like a couple years, I decided that I didn't want to go back to the UK and I wanted to stay in New Jersey and get back into the media industry. So I applied for a job at the local TV station in New Jersey, and that's always been my dream to work in my home state instead of like in the middle of nowhere where people like don't know me and don't know where I come from. So I applied for a job in Gurmat. Like I am reporting in my home state in New Jersey, and I've used my platform to do stories like about Partka Box, about like Vaisakhi, about Bandishore, like all these stories like within our community that matter. Now with my name, looking like a core and like giving voice to the issues that are so important for our community. So it's kind of like, it's come full circle, but like you guys, I was here in this seat with no idea what my place was in this world, who I was, or where I wanted to go. So,
Thank you, Jyoti.
that's it.
Bole Sonehal.
Sat
Sat
Sri
Sri
Akal.
Akal. Jyoti did a story in Vaisakhi at our Gurdwara, and we were all so excited. All the committee guys were like, who's going to interview? And we were like drawing straws and everything. But thank you for what you do. You're a role model and inspiration to all of us, and it's good to see a core on TV and everything. So really,
Oh, I forgot to come back to what I was supposed to do.
what were you supposed to do?
So the reason why I told you guys to say hello and look at each other, like now when I do my job, I keep my focus in like Simran. So I keep my focus in Waheguru. So it's like without moving my tongue, without like saying Waheguru, while I'm at work, that hello, that hi, whatever you said when you look left and right, that's your mind. So while I'm at work, like even though I'm doing stories about fire, shooting, stab, like you know what's on the news, I'm not gonna bring you into that. Like my focus isn't on the dukh that is going on in this world. That's my job, I'm doing it. We have to make a living, right? But my focus is on the Simran. So internally, while I'm at work, that hello, hi that you heard in your mind, what I hear and what I try to keep my focus on is doing the Simran inside. So now you guys know how to do it. So do it.
Okay. You have a question? Yes? Oh. Hold on. Let him bring in the mic.
Where can we find you like speaking on TV?
I can give you my social media and my website and stuff. Yeah, you could come, yeah.
Also, do you live in Maryland, or you just came to
I live in New Jersey.
Okay.
Yeah.
Others? Yes? Did you? Samane.
How many Sikh stories did you do?
How many what?
How many Sikh stories did you do?
How many Sikh stories have you done?
How many Sikh
stories.
Stories have
stories
I done?
on Sikhs.
So when I was at Baz, all my stories were about the Sikh community. And now that I'm with News 12, that's like a local TV station in New Jersey, I think I've done about 4 so far. So it's like I really try to like, a lot of times the stories that I do, like it's up to my managers, but like we have a voice in the room that's like giving these story ideas to them. Whereas like if I wasn't there, like they wouldn't know like what is Bandishore, like isn't that the same thing as like Diwali? And so it's like for me, like being there, it's like, no, it's not the same. Like this is what the story is.
One last question. Anybody have a question? Yes. Did you have a question? Yeah.
So did you face any problems as a Sikh in your life, like discrimination or anything like that?
Yeah, I would say so. Like I mentioned with my name, like no one could say my name at first. And I know like you guys are a little bit young, but like when September 11th happened, like I remember getting on the school bus the next day and like my classmates being like, hey, isn't your dad Osama bin Laden? And like that stayed with me. And that was a lot for me to deal with like as a kid, like to be told that my dad is a terrorist. Yeah.
Thank you, Jyoti. Bole Sonehal, Sat Sri Akal. our next speaker is a doctor. It's Dr. Anmol Kaur, and she's going to talk to us about her journey, about becoming a doctor and keeping her Sikh identity as well. So without further ado, Dr. Anmol.
Hello? Okay. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. My name's Anmol, and I just have to, before I even get into my journey, which I think is actually a lot more straightforward and familiar than all of you guys who have done such incredible, incredible work. I'm a little bit envious of this crowd who gets to start all over again, because I'm like, man, should I have joined the army? Or like, I don't know, like these are incredible careers, so very, very fortunate to be a part of this group. I actually have only been an attending hematologist/oncologist for less than a year, which feels odd to say because the journey is fairly long. I would say it probably started when I was in high school, kind of just understanding what I wanted to do. Both of my parents are physicians, so I think in that way it makes it very easy. I see what their life is like. They seem very happy with their life. And I know that is a big part of my story because I don't think everyone always has that exposure. So I think in high school, I ultimately decided that's what I wanted to do. And things I did in high school to kind of help get me there, definitely a lot of shadowing, a lot of volunteer hours, a lot of extracurricular and leadership activities, but I don't need to bore you with all of that because I'm sure that's changed a lot since 2009, 2010. But then after that, because I knew what I wanted to do, I made the decision that I wanted to do a combined undergrad medical school program so I wouldn't have to apply a second time. So I did my undergrad and med school at Drexel University. I forgot to open with this. I grew up in North Carolina, and I know there's people from North Carolina here. Woohoo, best state ever, even though I now live in Virginia. So, I did my undergrad and med school there, and again, I think the journey's fairly straightforward, but it is a kind of process of kind of understanding what you want to do, how you're going to get there. So there are a lot of steps along the way. But in medical school, decided I wanted to do oncology. How? Again, going back to my parents, my dad's an oncologist, but I swore I would never do it. I'd be like, oh, that's what he does. I'm going to do something different, and here we are. But it came down to what I actually enjoyed. So first, before anything, I know a lot of people in this room have probably heard, oh, go be a doctor, go be an engineer. You know, that's kind of child of immigrant mentality. I'm fortunate in the sense that my parents, because that's what they did, never really pushed it on me. But there are a number of careers in healthcare that are super, super important aside from being a doctor. So I also want to just say that. But I think oncology came to me because for that field specifically, it was a combination of science and empathy. So the science part, pretty much any field in medicine, you're going to use science. So if you enjoy science, it's probably a good route to go. But I think oncology also means that you need to be prepared to be with people on both their best and worst days of their life, and that's something that I actually enjoyed in medical school and residency. So after medical school at Drexel, I went to residency back in North Carolina at Duke, which is, I don't know if anyone's interested in internal medicine, but it is a great place to do residency. Just great people overall. And there I really focused on what I wanted to do long term. So I got involved in research with some mentors there. I spent extra time in oncology clinics, and then ultimately I did my fellowship at MD Anderson in Houston, Texas. Anyone from Texas? Right, really? Where are you from? Dallas. I've never been. Where are you from? Oh, sister. Okay. I never thought this girl from North Carolina would be living in Texas, but I did it for 3 years. It was, it was fun. So after Anderson, how I ended up in Virginia, I mainly just wanted to be closer to my family, and the job opportunity here was right. But one thing that a lot of people on this panel have said that was interesting, kind of for me, is I never really felt like I was a minority, in the sense that at Gurdwara, there's so many doctors you can talk to. Every person has somebody that they can reach out to for help or assist. Not every person, but there's usually in our communities, there's lots of doctors. So I never really felt that I was forging my own path. And I think it was, fortunate. And lots of resources with that, right? Like Gurdwara is more, it's not meant just for, prayer and sangat. Like there's a lot of things that, networking that can happen even there too. So that was, interesting. I actually had a patient last week tell me like, you're the 5th Dr. Singh I have. And I was like, oh, interesting. Like especially in Virginia, there's just a lot of people, which is nice. To kind of go back to the point of how Sikhi affected this path, I would say this year is the first year I feel like it's truly my superpower in the sense that, through training, medical school, we don't get a lot of hands-on experience until you're actually doing the job. So this is year 1 for me. And I have a lot of sick patients, and it's the first for me. And it's interesting in the sense that in the medical field as a whole, in healthcare as a whole, in recent years, and we're lucky to be a part of this, there's been a push towards equity, not only in who they admit to medical schools to bring in people that may not come from as fortunate backgrounds, but also diversity in the sense that, for example, there's lots of research, not lots, but there's more and more research in Black communities and Hispanic communities saying that if their physician is of the same background of them, their health outcomes are actually better. Not just they feel better, their outcomes of how long they live, how they do with their diseases are actually better. So when I remember the first sick patient I had, I was nervous because I was like, do I have to speak in Punjabi? Like, I don't know. And I was nervous. And from the get-go, at the end of our visit, there was some Punjabi, there was some English, but she was like, I'm just so happy I can communicate with you. And it's kind of been a universal thing with every patient I've seen since then, where they're like, I'm just so happy that they feel seen. So for me, I think that's such a cool part of my job now that I never even thought would matter. But despite there being lots of Singh scars in medicine, there can always be more because it literally lights up their day. So that's basically all I have.
Wonderful. We're at time. That's great. Good timing. Thank you. Bole Sondehal. So does anybody have a question for Dr. Anmol Kaur? Yes? You're popular. You got several hands up. All right.
Can you explain what exactly you do in your job?
What I do? Yeah. So there's lots of diversity in healthcare jobs. So what I do is not a one-size-fits-all. I do clinic 5 days a week. So that is basically 8 to 5. You're seeing patients, anywhere from 15 to 20 patients a day. So it's a lot. After you're done seeing patients, you dictate notes in the chart, which I'm sure some of you guys have seen, or your parents have seen yours, and then make phone calls to patients, go over scan results. We also, as oncologists, work in the hospital. So I'm mostly in the clinics, but every 8th week or so, I round in the hospital taking care of people with cancer or hematology problems that are admitted. My job's very weird in a sense that I can go see iron deficiency in one room and something much more serious in the other room, so, yeah.
Wow, wonderful. Yes?
So I know in oncology and hematology, there's not always like a clear-cut answer for patients. And I was wondering, like, on days where you don't, like, where you feel like you weren't able to give, like the best treatment to a patient, not the best, like, treatment, but patients always just want, like, an answer. Like,
Right.
They want to get treated, they want their problems fixed, they want cancer to be cured. But, like, we're not able to do that because there's so much we still don't know, right? So on days you feel like you weren't able to, like, make them feel good when they leave the room, how do you, like, incorporate Sikhi to, like, make yourself be like, uplifted?
That's a great question. Wow. So, wonderful question, and still figuring it out, if I'm being quite honest with you. But I actually kind of go back to what Jyoti was saying. I think Simran is very powerful, taking a moment, and this is not directly related to Sikhi, but I think it is in a way. I do Orange Theory for exercising, and one of my instructors was like, when you get to work, just take 3 seconds before you start seeing your patients and take 3 deep breaths. You can kind of incorporate Sikh in that way, and it's like in those deep breaths, you can just do Simran, and it is powerful. You need to pause, and I think that's what Simran reminds us to do.
Wow, wonderful. That's. Oh, you got a follow-up?
Yeah,
Okay.
I have like another question.
Okay.
So one day I want to also be a physician, and I was just wondering, how many years was your residency program?
Yeah, I'm fortunate, despite doing this for a while, I went straight through everything. So I didn't really take many breaks, but my internal medicine residency was 3 years, and then my oncology fellowship was 3 years. So it's a total of 6 with 4 years of med school.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
No problem.
Thank you, Anmol. Really appreciate, and definitely speak to Anmol offline and get her details and go from there. Thank you. We're going to move on to our final speaker. You already kind of got the trailer or most of the plot, and wanted to give you a little story. I've known Vishwajit Singh for over 20 years now, it has to be, and Vishwajit had a dream and a goal. He talked about it all the time. I know his older brother, and I know him, and we have a lot of friends, Panthik friends that are in common, and I've always found him really interesting. And there's a story that he told me about when he was going through his challenging phase, and I think your brother told me, or both of y'all told me, and it's because it involves a kirtani, one of my favorite kirtani, Dullah Virji. He does kirtan at Akhand Kirtan Jatha Samagams. And when Vishwajit was going through his challenging period, his brother would play nonstop Dullah Virji, just bombarding him with kirtan and everything. And I think both of them told me on their individual, when they're talking to me individually, that it had something to do with Vishwajit changing and moving forward. And then the other thing I wanted to say about Vishwajit is he had a goal, and he held on to that goal. You know, he kept on going. We even were like, Vishwajit, I don't know about that. It was after 9/11 when we met, and we were talking, and, I was like, Vishwajit, that's a very, that's a hard thing to do. He kept on persisting. Every time I'd meet him, either at a kirtan, at someone's house, or at Gurdeep's camp, where we've been doing these talks for about 10 years now, every year he was getting better. I remember he started Sikh tunes, and I'd be watching him online, and this is probably before most of you guys are even born. And he would do Sikh tunes and cartoons on political issues and stories from India and everything else like that. Very interesting. And then he slowly, he got a lot better in his cartoons. I think you published a book too? And so, and now I'm so happy to see that now he has this movie out, and he's continuing to. So without any further ado, I wanted to just take that me as an observer, a fan, and hopefully he considers me a friend, that I have been a personal witness to his growing and his connection with Guru Sahib. So we're going to have Vishwajit continue, talk to us about his journey, and then we're going to open it up for questions. Are you guys awake? You ready? This is the last speaker, okay? All right.
Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. So, you've seen my film, and all the panelists here, they did introductions. They all have more complicated stories. They only had so much time, so they were not able to share that. Just keep that in mind, right? They've given you kind of like some highlights. So I work in the biggest fire department in the US and the second biggest in the world. FDNY, that's the New York City Fire Department. There are over 11,000 firefighters, over 4,000 EMS personnel, people who drive ambulances, paramedics, and EMTs. There's also over 1,000 civilians. So I work in the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. You've heard of DEI, you've heard of, right? So it's been in the news a lot lately, sometimes not for good reasons, but fundamentally, what diversity, equity, inclusion means is, are we treating everybody fairly? Are we giving them opportunities that equally everybody has, right? Unfortunately, we don't, right? So that's the work that I do 9 to 5. My passion project on the side is to be a filmmaker, but here's what I want to say this to you, and this has been a theme with a lot of the speakers, actually all our speakers. You live in the most powerful, richest nation in the world. It still is the richest nation in the world. It comes with a lot of privilege. So you can find a career today and decide in your 20s and 30s, I want to change career. you can do that, and American culture actually almost like it supports you in that endeavor, right? So in your 40s or even 50s, so I'll give you an example. I'm gonna go back now. So my dad told me what I should do. He gave me two options, either be an engineer or a doctor. And that's kind of where he forced me to go. Eventually, on my own, I said, I'm not gonna do that. So I did public health. I went to grad school for public health, which is vaccinations, clean air, clean water. That's public health, right? COVID happened. A lot of people behind the scenes were public health people, right? So I do that for a few years. Then I switched to technology. I was a software engineer. Never went to school for that, by the way. Then I started cartooning after 9/11. 9/11 inspired me to become a cartoonist. I never went to school for that. I taught myself how to do cartooning by watching other people's work. And then eventually people started inviting me and saying, hey, come to our school and company, talk about your story. These are teachers, random people just coming out, once they saw my website and my work. So I started going into schools, and I never practiced telling stories, being a public speaker. So guess what? You learn it on the job. So today, I am in the diversity, equity, inclusion field. I'm also a filmmaker. I'm also a public speaker. And I did not go to school for any of those things. So what I want to say to you is, it is okay if you don't know what you want to do when you're in high school. It's okay if you're in college and you're like, you know what? I want to change my majors. That's totally fine. You can get a job, and after a few years say, you know what? I want to change. I've fallen in love with something else. You live in a nation that allows you to do that. Culturally, financially. Now, I will say this, which everybody has said here, you're going to have to work hard. You're going to have to excel. That's true for anything, but I just want you to know you can. So when I was in grad school at Berkeley for public health, two of my peers, one was in his 30s, a physician who was planning to go to space with NASA. One was a retired judge in his 50s who's like, I'm done with being a judge. I want to be a public health specialist. That is what is amazing about America. You can just do so many things that, by the way, a lot of people around the globe do not have that privilege. So just keep that in mind, right? Don't be too hard on yourself. Explore, work hard, learn from your mistakes, and don't be too hard on yourself. And, you're going to sometimes, I know these questions have come up. Have you had struggles with Sikhi? That's okay to have struggles, but be honest to yourself and make sure you talk to somebody in your life. Talk to your parents, talk to your peers, talk to Gurdeep Virji. If you're struggling, having questions about somebody's bothering you, don't keep it here, because I'm one of the, I know Virji mentioned I was a very shy kid. I never told my parents when I was getting bullied. Never. I never told anyone. So what happened is, when I moved back to the US and people told me to go back home, and eventually I decided I didn't want to stand out. I cut my hair because a couple of you asked me, did you actually cut your hair? I did it partly because I never told anybody that I was getting bullied. So if you are getting harassed, or bullied, or somebody's telling you something you don't like, don't accept it. Have a conversation with somebody in your life, because, by the way, a lot of people get bullied. More than 30, so Rucha is here in the house. She works with Sikh Coalition. More than 30% of kids who go to public school report getting bullied in the US. That's a very high number. And for Sikh kids, that number is double that number. That is unacceptable. Absolutely unacceptable. That number should be 0, but I don't know if you'll ever get there. But one thing you can do is stand up for yourself, and very importantly, stand up for others who might be getting harassed. So I'm going to stop there. Thank you for having me. Gurdeep Virji, thank you for having me here for the last few years. You guys hustled me when you were asking me questions, but I'm already thinking in my head, I want to create a full feature-length film because of your questions. So thank you for being you.
All right, you have a question for Vishivit? Yes? It's right behind you.
You said you were part of the diversity, equity, inclusion team, right? So have you heard recently in Texas, they I think passed a bill. I'm not sure, where it was it kind of got rid of that in universities, and they recently got rid of it in my university as well, and that kind of took away hundreds of clubs, and there was huge protests about it. I guess I'm asking do you know if there's anything that we as students can do to kind of ensure that because there were some really important clubs and really important accommodations that were just completely taken away without warning, especially when they our university said that they wouldn't be. So I just is there something we can do as students?
That's a great question. And by the way, last week I read this on the news, CNN and Microsoft very quietly laid off a lot of people who were doing racial equity work. So this is happening, by the way, all across the US, in blue states and red states. To your question, what can you do? I mean, so it's a complicated question, right? So I would say, educate yourself about what is happening. Hold the university accountable. I would write an opinion piece in the university newspaper. Have your voice be heard. Maybe connect with other students who feel like you.
Thank you so much.
Try to engage university leadership, because why universities and companies are doing this is they're feeling the pressure from certain forces in America, right? Those forces could be political and other cultural forces. So we have to step up and say, wait a minute, why would somebody have a problem with equity and inclusion, right? That is for everyone. It's not just for black and brown people. It's for everyone, right? So I would say push back, right? Obviously, when I say push back, I'm not saying go get aggressive, but I would say find allies and figure out ways of maybe reach out to news channels, make it a story out there, right? Because right now what's happening is people are pushing back. Like companies, universities, we're having this struggle where even I work. So I would just say keep it in the news, right? Don't let it die. And I have to think more about what else can you do, but I think we don't accept it, is what I would say. So figure out how we can keep it in the news, have this conversation, ask those people who made this decision, why did you decide? What led you to make this decision? Put them on the spot. Great question.
Any other questions for Vishwajit? Yes?
Hanji?
What got you into animating?
What got me into animation? I've always loved animation. So when Ryan said to me, hey, I want to tell you a life story, we were thinking about, okay, we can do live action, meaning, you have actors and everything. That's all. One of the reasons we were like, let's not do live action is doing 1984 and 9/11 live action, it's complicated. It's not easy. Second, and this is, where I'm just going to be very critical of our community. There's not a lot of Sikh actors out there. And what I don't like personally is when I see sometimes shows that have Sikh characters with people who have fake dardis, I'm like, you know what, no. If I ever create a film in the future, I want Sikh, real life Sikh people to act as, in those characters. So me and Ryan decided animation gives you a lot of that control. You don't have to hire people to be actors. You create characters out of thin air. And you ask somebody to sketch them, and then somebody else animates it. So animation gives you a lot of freedom. The only downside is it's very expensive. But you can raise funds. Great question.
Any other questions for Vishwajit? Okay, well, thank you so much, Vishwajit. Bole so nihal, sat sri akal. I know it's getting late, but we want to give everybody here a vote of thanks and a certificate for our appreciation to coming here, sharing their live experience with us and everything. And so I'm going to wait till Gurdeep Virji comes to present them with me. I don't want to take all the credit, but so we have to have the camera person ready. So I feel like I'm at Gurdwara Richmond Hill, and everything. All right. Gurpreet Singh Bhatia, thank you so much. Bole so nihal. Dr. Manmohan Singh, did he already leave? Okay, well, we'll give that to him later. Bole so nihal. Dr. Anmol Kaur. Dr. Anmol Kaur, I just need to tell you, I'm from Houston. Yeah, I'm from Houston. Yeah, that's our Gurdwara. Oh, yeah. So thank you so much for all you do, and we want to talk to you later. We have lots of questions on what you do. And Guru Mehr Kare. Thank you so much. Bole so nihal. Sat Sri Akal. Okay. Vishwajit Singh. Bole so nihal. Sat Sri Akal. Thank you, Vishwajit, for all that you've done and that you're doing. Guru Kirpa Kare. Oh, Dr. Saab. Hanji, Dr. Manmohan Singh, ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਬਹੁਤ ਤਹਿ ਦਿਲੋਂ ਧੰਨਵਾਦ। Thank you for your time and what have you. Thank you, Ji. Thank you, Ji. ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ। ਬੋਲੇ ਸੋ ਨਿਹਾਲ। And now, Magic Saab, ਤੁਹਾਡਾ Saminder Singh. Bole so nihal. Thank you for all that you do, and especially your great kirtan. And plus, I need a turban lesson, okay? Don't forget, all right? And with that, and Jyoti, you got one, right? We gave one to her earlier, and I was going to give one to Virji, but agli bari se. Okay. All right, with that, we're going to end. Bole so nihal. Sat Sri Akal. Vaheguru ji ka khalsa. Vaheguru ji